You know, a good product and good design don't necessarily have to be simple. The learning curve of learning something complicated could be extremely rewarding, or it could be extremely frustrating too. So the Cyborg II from Azeron fits that bill perfectly. Wow, that looks sick. This does feel very 3D printed though. Wow, this is gonna take some time to get used to. Day one. It feels really awkward. To be honest, this thing has been extremely intimidating from the beginning because of the 30 mappable inputs that you have to relearn for your left hand, and just going through the finger memory and the muscle memory of trying to go away from the WASD movement into the analog joystick movement has been both really challenging and kind of fun in some ways, but perhaps not in the games that I play. Like in the general FPS, I still prefer WASD, but I can see how you can really appreciate the joystick movement as well, just because it's still one of the key elements of this gamepad. And for people who are trying to transition from, let's say, controller movement to keyboard and mouse and slash, adding this into the mix, I would say would be a very fun addition. There are still very similar elements that are carried over from the original Cyborg. Like the entire thing is 3D printed, and it was 3D printed and shipped to me in 2 days, which is absolutely incredible for that type of service. And I would say like the build quality and the customizability in terms of comfort has definitely improved. But the biggest hurdle behind this product is actually its design and needing to completely rework your muscle memory. So just ask yourself, like, are you up for that task? Ironically, one of the things that the Cyborg II made me realize is just how much I appreciate a good mechanical keyboard and that traditional WASD movement, not because of finger memory, but just because how much better it is to click an actual mechanical switch on the keyboard versus something that feels like a very, very light mouse click instead. Like our fingertips are very sensitive, and having 6 inputs so close together per finger is not only going to be challenging for muscle memory, but also you're going to have lots of misclicks in the first several weeks for sure.
In the vastness of nature, every color tells a story. Matcha green, the color of renewal and fresh beginnings. I mean, take a hint. Hydrangea blue, the hue of tranquility and quiet reflections on how easy it is to work in. Snow white, the essence of purity and crisp air, and having all the hair after the assembly. And black, the depth of mystery shadows, but no mystery to hardware compatibility. This isn't just a stunning ITX enclosure, it's a vibe to shape your mood. The TR100 by Thermaltake. Check it out below.
Okay, so here's the product, the Cyborg II from Azeron. We have 24 programmable buttons on these towers, plus a joystick, which is analog, and this D-pad for your thumb. So there's definitely a lot for your fingers to do. I love this bottom view because it shows you just how modular this gamepad is. We have an included screwdriver, so you can configure the angle of each of your fingers. You can configure the length of the button tower and also the angle at which the buttons are actually configured towards your fingertips. Let's configure the point finger as an example. I've loosened up all the screws that are related to our adjustment. So we have 3. We have the length, which is nice. We have this main tower that allows you to activate the button, not with your fingertip, but let's say with your knuckle of the finger. And we also have this angle adjustment, which is really, really comfortable to make sure your finger is not as curved going into that main red button at the bottom. We have 2 palm rest options, the flat one and curved. The flat one is way more comfortable for my slightly larger hand because this here, the curve, just pokes me in weird ways. But if you do get them both, which is optional, you do have the accompanying installation hardware. Now, the obvious advantage with third-person games is that the joystick comes in handy for movement. You don't need competitive movement. And now I can go slowly or I can go full sprint all with just my thumb. I don't need to activate the sprint key or the walk key, for example, and you just have to remap the rest of your keys on the gamepad. But otherwise, it's a very comfortable experience. And for the joystick, you can change the angle. So for example, initially I had to push it almost all the way down for it to go forward, and you can change the angle so that it's a little bit more comfortable for which direction is forward for you. And then there are hack and slash games like PoE, Diablo that allow you to program a bunch of different abilities onto your keyboard, and you can perform different combos and stuff that allow you to just kind of clear out rooms quicker. And so this is where things kind of get really interesting for the Azeron, the Cyborg II gamepad, because I can program this button for my flash grenade. When that explodes, I can go in and fire a different weapon that supports the flashbang, for example, and that is very, very cool to do. It did take some time to get used to in terms of reconfiguring the keybinds from what I'm used to on the keyboard, but I just kind of redid my finger memory for the Azeron gamepad, and it works very well. For games like The Last of Us, I use my mouse for navigation, and you can still use the joystick if you prefer that type of mobility and movement. And the only thing, again, is that you have to remap all your keys per game. And for example, if you don't play a certain game and you come back to it 2 weeks later, you might not recall how the mapping on the joystick works because none of the keys on the exterior are labeled, and it becomes a little challenging to recognize what input does what inside the game. The one major disadvantage of having the joystick mapped as our Xbox controller is that some games don't recognize both inputs, like keyboard, mouse, and the joystick, but games that do, it will constantly switch visually between the visual cues of your Xbox controller versus your keyboard and mouse. So every time I move my mouse, it just kind of glitches out the visual cues for, the inputs on screen. Many games do this, and that's just the nature of having a joystick plugged in at the same time as the keyboard. Luckily, you can easily switch between the Xbox and the analog controls to just recognize the joystick as a keyboard, and all those issues disappear. And then we have games like Escape from Tarkov that have a very complicated movement system because you can do so much with your character in terms of scopes, in terms of attachments, and your character has weight. So initially I thought like the keyboard would be superior in terms of movement, but actually really like using the joystick for this type of movement just because you can do a very quick circle strafe, which means that you can change directions much quicker than just going from A to D, because that's not how the game works. And so I've been really enjoying it. Just been kind of complicating trying to map everything to, to certain keys and remembering what those keys mean. Right now, like, I just accidentally reloaded where I was intended to just peek left. Even after several weeks of trying to use this as like my main, I still kind of miss out on exactly where I'm going. And I don't find that problem with the keyboard. I would say one of the most important use cases for this product are for people who have limited mobility and who cannot use the keyboard for other reasons or in the WASD area, because this is way more comfortable and more ergonomic. You can customize it to your wrists and your fingers and how you like to play, because you can move with just the thumb and not necessarily have to engage other fingers for movement, but you can engage these other fingers for all types of other functionality in games and macros and just general PC work. And because we have onboard profiles with color coding, you can create one for your most used game versus maybe productivity application, and sort of kind of see how it fits into your lifestyle that makes things easier. But it could also make things more difficult in the long term, or in that initial, however long, learning period. After several months of using this thing, I can totally see the potential. And if you are the person who is willing to get over the hurdle that is the very difficult learning curve, then for sure, if you're tired of the keyboard, then this thing is an awesome addition to your gaming space for productivity. If you love macros, sure. My only hurdle and like the biggest complaint is that the switches are too light. Like, I'm constantly switching or clicking the stuff that I don't want to click. And that's kind of an issue, even though I've configured this thing for my optimal, I guess, grip style for my fingertips. So they fit nicely into this sort of glove. And yet I'm constantly hitting stuff I don't want to hit. I wish they were heavier, or give us an option to adjust these Omron switches, although you can't really adjust the heaviness of the switches, maybe not on this scale. As for issues, I don't find any build quality here, although the fingers and the towers do loosen up a little bit, so you have to occasionally tighten things. My thumbstick does disconnect once in a while. So right now, for example, why did we... Hello? I was just moving. Oh, hello? What? Okay, so the Xbox joystick is being detected. Hello? Did we just lose connection again? Bloop, 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 bloop. And this thing would be lost recognition in the software. They have to just kind of unplug it and plug it in with USB-C cable, which is, nice, but still it's kind of an annoying problem to have occasionally. One of my point finger switches were stuck upon delivery, but over time it's gone back to normal. And I would love for the ability to physically label these keys on the actual product and not just go into the software and click it to see what is being highlighted as an input, because it's very easy to do when you're in game. I'll tap to see like, okay, which profile am I in? But being able to just physically see that on the gamepad itself would be way more functional. It won't be as pretty, but if we are competing with the keyboards, let's try and kind of be in the same space, In general, this thing is pretty awesome, but not for me. I would stick with the keyboard, but let me know if you agree. I'm Dmitry. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next video.